And I instantly recognized, or was instantly gifted the ability to recognize for the first time in my life, that this was a window I can jump through,
Yes.
and so I did. And I knew in that moment, like, I'm not going to jump through this window and everything's going to be okay. I knew in that moment that I can jump through this window and take this step that I don't want to take, and take this step that I don't want to take, and start to take these steps that I've been avoiding for years, for decades, and that I was going to get better. I knew it. It was a promise to me in that moment. And I just decided to start doing things that I had been avoiding, like the plague, for so long. And I've never looked back.
Welcome to Mental Health and Faith, a closer look. I'm Carolyn Cooper. It is challenging to live with mental and emotional health issues, whether you live with it yourself or love someone who does. I know this from experience on both sides. But I also know that we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. And that's what this podcast is about. I also hope you will join the conversation, post comments, share this podcast with others, and let me know if you would like to come on as a guest. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for joining me. I believe you are referring to doing the things that are necessary for your health and well-being that you had been avoiding. Is that
Yes,
correct?
it is. Yeah. And these are things that were suggested to me. To be very specific, in that moment, what that meant to me was to go to my ex-father-in-law's house in the desert in Arizona and stay there for 2 days. I had just been kicked out of another sober living house at the time. I had been hiding my use, and it was just getting really out of control with my delusions. And it meant go there. And me and this man do not get along, but he is a very faithful man, a man of God, and he was never a huge fan of me putting my first wife, his daughter, and his granddaughter through so much turmoil. But his hand was stretched out, and in that moment, it's not like he was super happy to hear my voice, but he was super happy to see the change in
Mm-hmm.
attitude. So what that meant was to go there and to dry out just enough so that I can crawl back to my halfway house manager and ask him if I can be back in the house no matter what his requirements were. And his requirements were to move into a house that I didn't want to live in, and to attend this structure of meetings that I didn't want to attend, and to talk to him every day. And I had a huge problem with talking to people every day, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I just felt, that I had too much to hide. It was so exhausting talking to people that cared about me, because it was just nonstop hiding what was actually going on inside me. But those were the steps. Those were the things that I hated to do in the beginning. The things I failed to do were to show up to my appointments, to be honest about my slip ups, which was, let me just emphasize this real quick. Throughout childhood and throughout my turbulent years, and for even outside of my turbulent years, admitting when you've made a mistake to the people that care about you is probably the single most important thing that I ever did or ever will do going forward. Trusting the people that love you, trusting the people that care about you, to let them know when you've messed up, or if you want to even call it messed up, or when you've gone off course, or when you're feeling like harming yourself, or anything like that. You trusting the people that care about you or that are tasked with taking care of you is just monumental.
And I love that you said you trust the people in your life enough to share that with them. I would also add,
Mm.
you have to be confident enough that you are making the decisions that are necessary for your health and well-being, that even if they don't give you the response you're looking for, you can still trust in the process. For
So
me,
hard to do.
it is extremely hard to do. And that's where, as a Christian, that's where I can always trust in the Lord, because He's never going to let me down. Even if the people in my life may not respond the way I want to, I have the Lord. And as a Christian podcast, I just want to affirm that
Mhm.
God is the only truly trustworthy being in our lives. I'd love to have you, just to make sure we have time in the program. I would love to have you share. You've had this aha moment.
Mhm.
You've gone to your ex-father-in-law. You're making the changes you need to make. And can you kind of fast forward to when you feel like you have graduated from the uh, key part of recovery and are ready to start moving on through a more of a maintenance program? And just for our listeners, a lot of times when people are in recovery, those are the years when they are spending doing the really, really hard work Brian was talking about, of going to your therapy, going to the psychiatrist, taking your medication. And it was about a 3-year process for me. My intense recovery time. I was doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a trauma tool. And so, that time when you're doing that hard work, but there comes a time when, even though you will always live in a recovery lifestyle, there comes a time when you are more maintaining it and not having to do the hard work in the initial part of your recovery. Can you share with us when you got to that point that you were like, I'm ready to go now?
Sure. And if you would have, if you're asking when I thought that, the answer was right away.
Okay, of course.
But I trusted enough to continue with my team, which was a psychiatric team provided by the state of Arizona, and we kept going for a long time. We kept going for months and months and months.
Mhm.
But this is the gift that I'm talking about. This is here. Like you said, I've been doing that hard work for so long, for years at that point. So when this finally hit, that window of opportunity finally came, and I went through it. It was all about proving that it had happened to me,
Mhm.
not testing to see if it had happened to me, showing the world that it had happened to me. So my life changed very quickly. So I know the date that it happened. It was December 18th, 2018. Um, I met my wife. Let me back up just a second. I was diagnosed, I was formally declared disabled by the federal government. But by the time we had gone through the courts and got to the hearing, I was already working full time again. So there was
Wow.
years where I was disabled, and the courts recognized that. But we did a closed period, and they acknowledged that I was disabled, but not anymore. I was working full time, and I met my wife 6 months after December 18th, 2018. The
Wow.
summer of 2019, and I was still going to therapy. I was still doing all those things, and things just accelerated so fast. It was, now I was confident enough to like just reach out for this. I have 3 felonies on my record. I'm still applying to jobs. I'm just going in and just starting at the bottom, washing dishes wherever I go, just to make it up the chain as quickly as possible. And it worked. um, by the time COVID rolled around, so we're talking, so 2018 down to 2020, March 2020 is when COVID hit. That was around the time that my mental health team was starting to cut the cord, so to speak, starting to tell me that everything was, that I was doing all the things I was supposed to, that I was hitting all of my metrics. By the end of that first summer of COVID, my then now fiance at the time, so she was my fiance by April of 2020. We were going to move to Kansas to be closer to her family, now out near Kansas City. And that's when we kind of had a farewell with my medical team, and they gave me a thumbs up, and there was tears. I had
Mhm.
doctors in tears,
Yeah.
wishing me all the best, and I still check in with them whenever I can. But as soon as I left the valley, which I still think of profoundly. It's just leaving a lot of things behind, leaving all of that trauma, leaving that place, leaving all of the circumstances behind, jumping off the diving board, trusting what's going to be underneath me, that I can figure it out when I land wherever I'm going to land. And that's been where the maintenance has happened. And the
That's
maintenance
awesome.
has truly been, this is part of the maintenance. It's about recognizing that there's countless people out there still struggling. Some, like, however you want to measure it, not as bad as I was, way worse than I was. It doesn't matter. There's people out there who do not believe that they can recover, or they do not believe that, and they do not believe that there is a loving creator that has put you into existence for a reason.
Amen. You know, I want you to kind of continue talking about this part, this beautiful part of life for you right now. And as you do, if there's more that you want to share, I want you to also think of what you would say to that person that you just mentioned. That person, what would you say to that person that says, it's hopeless. I'm never going to recover from this. My family will never welcome me back. My kids will never look at me again. That person that's out there and can't see that there really is another side. There's another side in that journey. What would you say to them, Brian?
That's that's tough, because
Mm-hmm.
even today, I believe that that version of myself was told everything. That everyone told me over and over all sorts of different things. And the only thing that I can think of, if I was to travel back in time and sitting there talking to myself, is just let it go. Let go of your fear of what's going to happen to you. Let go of your fear of how this is going to pan out. Let go of your expectations of a situation that you want to form in any way that you do. If a relationship or if a circumstance or a job or a living situation isn't going to survive you getting better, that's a good thing. The things that don't survive you becoming your full version of yourself are not supposed to be there. And one could argue
Ah,
that they're possibly in the way of you getting better. I stayed in that town for 20 years trying to make it work, trying to figure out ways to do it. And then I would just tell him, leave Phoenix, trust that everything will be okay. Not because you do one thing or another, just believe that you're going to be okay if you just be honest and think about and take the advice of the people who care about you. And that's it.
mm-hmm.
That's truly the only thing that got me better. I wouldn't have had that moment in that car if it wasn't for all the work that the mental health professionals and my family had done the 20 years before that. Otherwise it probably would have just been another psychotic breakdown. It's just all of that time and energy and love and focus into getting me better culminated in that moment, you know? And so I say that creator touched me, that, it was just everything. It was the creator. It was all the love bundled into that one moment. It
Mm-hmm.
finally happened. And just do not give up. Don't give up. Keep your head down, keep trying, and listen to people who love you.
I love that. I love that. So probably one of the wisest things you said in that encouraging moment, Brian, was the reminder that you will leave some things behind. I left behind a very unhealthy coping habit that was just part of me. I left behind a lot of fear. I left behind a lot of things. You left behind Phoenix. You left behind a lot of bad habits and things. And the exciting thing is, you get to discover who you really are when you let those things go. Just like what you said,
Yeah.
you get to explore, who am I? Who has God created me to be? And it's probably not that person who was doing drugs or flirting with somebody that wasn't their husband or whatever it was for whoever
Yeah.
you are in your situation. It, it's exciting, and I'm just really excited to see who you are now. I can hear your story, and I can hear the things you did then, and I can say, that's not you now. I know you and who you are now. The rest of
Well,
it is just, it's your story.
I
So
really appreciate that.
thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much.
Of
Um,
course.
we're gonna wrap it up, Brian, and I I appreciate your vulnerability, your willingness to share, and I know your heart's passion is for other people to hear your message. That's why we do what we do. That's why I have this podcast. I don't want somebody to wait 30 years like you did, like I did, from the time I had some trauma in childhood until I had a mental breakdown. It was 30 years. And unfortunately, I've talked to multiple people who have that same pattern. They have some trauma, they find a way to cope with it, they don't recognize the harm they're doing to their lives and to other people. If, listeners, if you have something going on in your life and you don't know exactly why you're behaving the way you do or making the choices you're making, stop and think and go and talk to someone and explore what could be contributing to those behaviors and things. And Brian just had a beautiful story demonstrating that there was a lot more to it than a rebellious teenager. So, anyway, any final comments, Brian?
Caroline, I just that I couldn't agree with what you just said anymore if I wanted to. I really appreciate you having me on. This is, I
Mhm.
consider, one of the things that I thought was never going to be possible was sitting and telling somebody how I made it out. So if there's anyone at all that hears any part of themselves in any of this, I'm really honored to be able to sit here and say that they can make it out too, and they will. They will. They just keep trying. Do not give up. And so I have a lot of respect for your podcast, for the work that you do, and I just look forward to having you in my circle of friends for a very long time.
Yes. You don't do it alone, folks.
Yeah.
You do not do it alone. So read the show notes. I'm going to ask Brian if he'd be willing to share his email address or something. So if people wanted to reach out directly to you, Brian, and so read the show notes. And I have more wonderful episodes coming in May to celebrate that there is hope and recovery is possible. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and share this important and encouraging information with those you love. See you next time.